So is Spokane finally cooling off, or are we about to heat up again as we head into fall? We broke down the August market numbers across 6 of Spokane's biggest suburbs, and there's one town with a massive plot twist, and I want to talk to you about it. So whether you're already living here, thinking about relocating, or just trying to time the market, you need to know exactly what's happening in all of the sub-neighborhoods, Mead, Liberty Lake, the South Hill, depending on where you're looking for, because not every headline gives the full story. I'm Haydn Halsted, your real estate resource here in Spokane. I'm excited to jump into this information with you. If you want to connect with my team, use the contact information down in the description. We'd love to help you out with your move, whether you're relocating into, out of, or across Spokane. So let's jump into these numbers. So we have in Spokane 4.7 months of inventory, and this is going to be kind of our number that we're talking about across all of these sub areas in Spokane is the month supply of inventory. It's the number of solds divided by the number of actives, and this tells us how quickly the market is moving. And so Spokane is sitting at 4.7 months of inventory. I've seen this number hit a 5, and what that means is that we are starting to approach being in what's called a balanced market. Now, Spokane has been in a seller's market, anything below really this line here, for almost 10 years. Last time we were there was just in a little bump here in 2016. But we're approaching 9 to 10 years of basically a straight seller's market. And any inventory that's about 4 months or less, we had extremes during the COVID era where we were at 2 weeks of inventory and things were flying off the shelves super quickly. And so there are some areas in Spokane that are still pretty low. And as we're going to see in this video, there's some neighborhoods that are at 1.5 to 1.8 months of inventory. So make sure you watch that because it could be your neighborhood. It could be a good time to sell. But there are other areas where we have more than 7 months of inventory and be considered a buyer's market at that time. And we're even going to break it down by price point in specific neighborhoods. So if you live in the Spokane Valley with a home between $600,000 and $750,000, you're going to know exactly where your property sits in today's market. So make sure to stay tuned for that. So moving on to the first sub area is Spokane. So we're going to look at just the city of Spokane. I'll put a map up here just so you know exactly where the city of Spokane is at. But this is where I currently live, is in the city of Spokane. It's where I've always lived. I grew up on the South Hill. I've lived in the northeast area on my first house north of Gonzaga, and now we live in the northwest in the Audubon neighborhood. And so currently Spokane is sitting at 403,000. That is up just 0.8%, just barely, from 400,000 in 2024. And so we've seen very slight gains over the last 12 months here. There's currently 551 homes that were newly listed last month. And so we have an increase of almost 8.7% from last year. So we're seeing more sellers come into the market. And then we had 314 homes go pending last month. So we're seeing continued discrepancy between the number of homes that are going pending, 4.7, and then the number of homes that are coming to the market, 8.7. So we have this 4% gap that's continually adding on to the current inventory. Depending on the month, that gap could be even larger. And that's what's causing our market to slow down. Is the bigger this gap gets, the more new homes that come to the market, with the less that go pending, the more inventory we have and the slower the market's going to be. And so just last month, we had 273 closed, which was down almost 10% from last year, which was indicative of what we were seeing in July, where we really, once school got out and we got into July, the Spokane market really fell off a cliff and not feeling like we were putting a lot of deals together. Listings were sitting longer. So I think next month we will see this number go up comparatively to next year as we're starting to see things move a little bit quicker here. So in the city of Spokane, our month supply of inventory is at 3.5. So that's about a month less than what the market as a whole is looking at. And when I said that 4.7 months of inventory, that was the entire Spokane MLS. So that's anything that's been entered into our MLS. There's not an exact radius for that, but it's basically anything in Spokane County. There will be some listings all the way up to the Canadian border, even though they have their own MLS up there. Sometimes they'll put them in the Spokane MLS. This is going out west past Davenport, some areas into Ritzville. So anything that's basically could be an hour, even 2 hours outside of Spokane that that listings are being put in here. So that's why we're looking at micro markets so that you get a better idea of what's actually going on. So that's up 44% from last year, where we were at 2.4 months of inventory. So we have seen Spokane slow down quite a bit. We can see even this big jump just from the beginning of the year to where we are now. We've just been adding inventory very consistently throughout the year. So this is the breakdown by price point in Spokane. And so you can see that if you have a listing that is above even 750,000 here, you're walking into that buyer market territory. That's what this blue line represents, is walking above or through the balanced market into the buyer's market. So 750 to a million is sitting around 7 months of inventory or so. And then a million to 1.5 is at over 12 months of inventory. So it's very saturated right now. And I should mention that all of the data we're looking at here is single family homes, residential homes that are under 1 acre. Because I'm actually going to bring up later what is actually slowing down our market the most. So stay to the end till that, because it's going to be surprising at how slow some of these larger properties are moving right now. But if you have a home that's in between 3 to 400 or 4 to 500, you're still in that 3 month supply of inventory range. But the ironic thing, and I think you're going to see this pattern here, is that homes above 1.5 million are actually selling quite a bit faster than homes that are below 1.5 million. And we're seeing this rise in unique individual properties and the money still being there for specific homes that have a specific value to them. So it's very interesting that we're seeing this discrepancy in properties. There's much less homes in the Spokane region that are above 1.5 million. There's not a ton of inventory that exists in that price point. So that's part of it, is that there's still a scarcity around those properties. And so when they do come up and the money is there, people are going to jump on it. But you can see even here, the interesting thing is that there's actually more inventory in the 500 to 600 range than there is in the 600 to 750 range. So you're actually going to stay on the market quite a bit longer in this more average price point here than if you have more of a move up, maybe slightly nicer home in the Spokane area. So next we're going to jump into the Spokane Valley and see how this compares. So pricing is a little bit higher at $435,000, but it's down, unlike the city of Spokane, where we're at negative 3.2% growth from last year, where the highs were at 449. New listings are down as well, 6.8% to 136. We're seeing pending sales up just slightly at 3.2%. So we're seeing a smaller gap here in the number of active listings versus the ones that are going pending. And we're actually seeing a pretty small gap between the ones that are going pending and actually closing. So we're seeing less properties fall through in the Spokane Valley area, maybe because there's newer construction over there than we are in Spokane. But we had a 13% drop in the number of closed sales. Again, slow summer this summer versus last year. Nationally, the headlines are saying that this was one of the slowest summers that across the entire country since like the 2008 housing crash. And not that it was a crash, but buyers were just out of the market due to affordability and couldn't buy this summer. So month supply of inventory in the Spokane Valley is a little less at 2.7, but it's up 47% from last year, whereas at 1.8. So we're definitely seeing that summer inventory increase. We've seen this drop just a little bit over the last couple months. Interesting to see this V shape as we dropped down into the early spring market, and then after March, April, just started adding on that inventory. And so now across price points in the Spokane Valley, this is actually very interesting. Again, a lot of desire for homes that are luxury price points, 1.5 million and above. There is an oversupply of homes that are between 750 and a million, over 6 months of inventory there. And you're actually gonna have an easier time selling a home that's truly luxury, 1 million to 1.5 plus right now, than you would on a home that's 750 to 999. So that's always very interesting, that if you have those unique, really nice established properties, it's actually more attractive right now. And so, but once you drop down into, again, some of these other price points, oversaturation in the 5 to 600 range. So if your house is listed at that point, you're 4 months of inventory. If you're at 6 to 750, you're closer to 3 months of inventory right now. So your property is going to sell a little bit faster, even though it's a little bit more expensive and a little bit nicer, because we don't have as much good inventory in those price ranges. So now this is the third out of the 6 that we're going to be looking at, checking out Liberty Lake and Green Acres. Median sales price quite a bit higher than the two at $470,000, which makes sense for the types of properties that we have in those areas, but it's down significantly from last year, 21.3%. Now this could be a combination of having just extremely high sales last year at this time, but I mean we also are seeing a huge drop from just a few months ago as well. So maybe specifically in Liberty Lake, we'll see once we get to the month supply of inventory, is there an oversupply of luxury properties in this area that people aren't actually buying? But the reason I choose the median is that is actually more accurate than the average, because if the average is going to swing much harder if there was a very high sale or a very low sale, the median is the true middle number. So we're seeing that the middle median house is selling for quite a bit less in Liberty Lake, and there's less people are spending money over there. And that could be indicative of the inventory in this price range as well, because we have some new construction areas that have kind of wrapped up or gotten closer to wrapping up in that area. That could be affecting those numbers as well. So new listings, we're at 54, up 3.8%. Pending sales at 443. That's up 13.2% from last year. So good activity there. And we don't have too much of a gap between the number of listings. And we actually have more closings for the first time out of the three areas that we've looked at, 48 closings, meaning it was actually a relatively active summer in Liberty Lake because compared to 32 closings last year. So now the surprising thing here is month supply of inventory is at 1.8 across Liberty Lake. So it is highly desirable compared to the rest of the market. Obviously, this is still slower than COVID times, but this is significantly faster and more desirable than the rest of the market in our area. So that's something to consider if you are a seller in Liberty Lake, or if you're buying in the area, it's highly desirable right now. We can see that there's been some pretty high variation in this, and it really just depends on what the inventory is looking like at that time. But this is down from last year, 11.8%. And if we look at the price breakout here, what's really interesting is that actually in Liberty Lake, we have really nothing right now above $1.5 million, which is a little bit surprising. And I feel like could be a little bit of an inaccuracy of this data here, because I know I've seen a few listings in this price point in that area. But for right now, we're seeing, again, an oversupply in this $500,000 to $600,000 range, that kind of average home in that Green Acres, specifically in that Green Acres area, or along like Chapman Road, or just at the very bottom of Legacy Ridge. Looking at the 1 million to 1.5 million is actually a very good time to sell a property there. And you're going to be doing better than those kind of smaller $750,000 to $1 million properties. So now Deer Park is going to be very interesting as we check this one out, because there's a lot of inventory that is on more than an acre, and I want to show you how that affects the market as we look at this a little bit further, and when I show you exactly what is slowing our market down as a whole. So the median sales price in Deer Park is $440,000. It's up a lot from last year, so good place to have been buying last year. Last year was at $373,000 for the month. New listings are at 21, which is up 50%. A lot of new construction in the area going on right now. Pending sales is at the same, so there's a very quick absorption rate going on here as well, up 40% from last year. And then the solds are down slightly, which is interesting. But so we just had a really good pickup here in August, homes hitting the market at that time. But obviously transacting, we had 14 closed there. So 2.5 months supply of inventory currently with the current inventory on the market. And again, this is for homes that are on less than 1 acre. So still relatively active. We had an interesting spike here in the last few months, but we've had a lot of inventory get absorbed or even removed from the market. But breaking it out across price point, there's an oversupply of homes in the 300 to 400 range, which is very surprising to me. And then the one thing I want to look at here is that we see nothing in this $600,000 to $750,000 range, which the point I want to make here is that this is on properties that are less than 1 acre. And so I really want to show you the activity in Deer Park that's on more than 1 acre, because there's obviously property from 3 to 40 acres. This is going to include all of them. And so that changes the inventory. It goes up to 3.3 months supply of inventory. And now we have added back our column of 600 to 750,000, and we have 11 months of inventory. So if you are somebody that's trying to sell a property on land in the Deer Park area, you're going to have a hard time, because that's kind of this average price point for a solid house on maybe 5 to 10 acres, which is very common out there. We're not seeing a ton of inventory in that $1 to that $1 million to 1.5 range. Again, not sure what exactly the situation is here, because I'm fairly certain that there's listings in that price point. But if you're in that $750,000 to $1 million range and you're on land, you're actually going to do pretty well. So this is saying that you should be looking, if you have a property that's larger, that is really pristine, maybe a new build, it's going to be much more attractive to somebody than an older home on land in the current market. And now as we look at Colbert, Mead, and Chattaroy, all as kind of a North Spokane conglomerate, I'm going to break it down price-wise in looking at current month pricing and then year-to-date pricing, because the numbers were a little skewed here. And so right now, August, we're at 626, which is up 31%. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy if that's true. I'm just wondering what caused that, or what has the market looked like this entire year? And so if we look at the year-to-date numbers, this is saying everything that was sold so far, what's been the median, and we're at 513,000, gives us a larger data pool to look at, but that's still up almost 10% from last year. So if you thought that the market was going down or not performing well, if you live in North Spokane, Mead, Colbert, or Chattaroy, it's been highly desirable and somewhere that people want to pay the extra money for. So this has been very interesting to look at and see that this is actually not a slow moving market up there. We've had less listings hit the market since last year, 24% less than last year. So there's some scarcity out there. We're seeing slightly less pendings because of that, or less inventory. And then our closed are down as well. So there's been a scarcity. People are holding onto their properties up in those areas. 2.5 months supply of inventory currently, which is equivalent to what it was last year. And so to not see much of an increase is kind of rare. Again, similar spikes that we're seeing in this early summer. A lot of these neighborhoods had a lot of inventory, and then it's interesting to see that did they come off the market? Did we just have a lot of deals go pending in the last few months? It's hard to say without totally digging in, but if you would like to know deep dive on some of these specific neighborhoods, what's going on, just leave a comment. I'd be happy to make a video about it. And now I'm about to talk about our 6th area, which is the West Plains, including Cheney, Airway Heights, and Medical Lake. So if that's you, make sure to stick around and watch this. But we're going to touch base after this and talk about where is all the inventory, because so far the month supply of inventory for most places has been significantly less than the market as a whole. So I want to talk to you about that before we end this video. So the West Plains are looking at 420,000, which again, great investment area, up 8% from last year. We're at slightly less listings, 17% less, 39 right now compared to 17 last year. So a little bit of a scarcity. Pendings are up. So we actually had more homes go pending than hit the market. So this is a really good sign for those homeowners in the West Plains areas, not so much the buyers. But our closed deals were down as well. So less homes have been hitting the market, less closed deals. And month supply of inventory, again, low 2.3. It's up 47% from last year, where it was at 1.5, but still highly desirable compared to the rest of the market. So the question is, where is all the inventory? Like we said, it's all been pretty low. So the thing that I found when I was originally running the numbers, or if you look back at that very first slide I showed, it said 4.7 months of inventory. That includes residential, condos, manufactured homes on land, and just raw land, factoring that all together. And so this is raw land right here. There's 14.2 months of inventory. So if you are a landowner and looking to sell, it is not an opportune time necessarily to sell that property. But you can see that we've also always kind of been in more of a buyer's market on this. There's been always an influx of land, unless we were in those COVID era times. So, we were at one point in the last year looking at 32 months supply of inventory. So this is just something you got to factor in if you're trying to get rid of a land listing right now. You're going to have to price it uber competitively, do things that make the land more attractive, have utilities already in place, because there's going to be a lot of choices for a potential buyer out there, specifically if you don't have this absolutely unique location that somebody would be looking out for. This next one is condos. So condos are at 5.5 months of inventory, so very balanced market, and it's up 25% from last year. Manufactured homes on land are at 4.5, sitting closer to that average, and up 30% from last year. And then this is 5.6 months of inventory. This is properties that are on 1 or more acres across the entire Spokane area. So this is showing that properties on more land are taking longer to sell as well. And that hasn't been the case. Obviously, it was very desirable during the COVID times, has become a little bit less desirable, but even up until 2025 even, it was for the most part in a seller's market. And so we've been really hanging out in this balanced market range for a lot of 2025 in terms of the amount of land. And this is indicative of how much money people have in order to maintain those properties because they're more expensive to maintain. That could be part of it, but that's what we're seeing right now is if you're an acreage property, you're going to have a much harder time selling. And then this is a look at acreage properties across all price points. Obviously, there's almost over 14 months supply of inventory for anything that's above 1.5 million. And again, the acreage properties being anything above 1 acre. And again, still in a balanced market on anything above 750,000. Highly desirable in the lower price points with a house. So people that are okay with a very much of a fixer upper on a property. These are young couples that are wanting to homestead. I have some clients like that myself right now. We're negotiating on a farmhouse that is needing a lot of work, but comes with 40 acres and they want to farm it. And so they're open to, they're looking to find that property that they can fix up and start their farm in. But if it's too much of a fixer upper, then obviously 200 to 300,000 is 11 months of inventory right now. So factor that into your numbers. So that's everything I got for you today. I hope this in-depth analysis of 6 areas around Spokane was very helpful to you. If you're looking at a specific location and you want some more information, you can just email me, text me with the information down below. Shoot me the area you're looking at and I'd be happy to run these exact numbers for you on that specific location because I couldn't hit all of them in this video. And again, if you're interested in working with the Halsted Home Team to help you relocate in, out, or across Spokane, we would love to do that. Just reach out with the information down below. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.